Okay, so it up with the organizational types. We just talked functional managers. Now we want to talk about a projectized organization, right? Where the project manager has a full complement of functions and frankly, it's standalone. You are large and in charge, in control. And this is what a projectized organization may look like, where each unit is broken down into the various projects. uh, Express Scripts is a company that, in large part, is built this way. I have friends there that will work on a project for 6 months, 8 months. They'll get a couple months off and they'll want it, and then they'll come back to the next project. Some will go project to project. So their advantage is you have more power as the project manager, full control really, and all members report right to you, right? Not to you and the functional manager, or not to the functional manager, right? Comparing a functional manager to a matrix, which we're going to discuss next. It's a shorter line of communication, right? There aren't identity issues. Decisions are made faster. Unity of command and unity of effort that go with that, right? It's a good holistic approach. Of course, it also has disadvantages. It duplicates some staff. So each project manager will have a procurement manager on there, somebody that can commit for the company and sign contracts, right? Which is generally not a project manager authority. So you will have to duplicate that over and over, right? Um, the project can sometimes take a life of its own in a projectized organization. That's why it's nice to have a PMO, an active PMO to over you to support. Then there are matrix organizations, right? And matrix organizations are really the reality of where most of us live nowadays, right? It's a combination of that standalone projectized and that functional, right? So I have a project, but I can go cross function to people that work in the functions, but I'm matrix to them. I don't have to go up through the functional manager and over. They know it's part of their day-to-day tasks. And it can take a variety of forms. For example, a strong matrix organization, the project manager has more control, more authority. But you want to define it like this. I worked on base at Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, was my last assignment. And there they went to a matrix organization for a new headquarters. They said, we'll have a new headquarters, but we won't need people. The leadership can reach out to the other headquarters. Well, that was good plan, but they never defined whether it was strong, weak, or a balanced matrix, right? So who do I commit my time to when there are competing demands, right? So you want to define it. And a strong matrix gives the project manager more control over the project functions. And here's what it might look like, where the PM reaches out and they'll have people that do part-time from marketing, part-time from finance. You can reach out to them as you need them on your project. Now then, on the opposite side of strong matrix is a weak matrix, where the project might have only one full-time person, like the project manager. A weak matrix really starts to look like a functional type organization, right? Where you're still the project manager, but really you become a project coordinator or project expediter, right? And you're really working for the functional departments at that point. And then a balanced matrix, right, it creates this maximum friction or tension, which is not necessarily a bad thing, between you and the functional manager, right? It's a balance between weak and strong matrix, right? Sometimes not evenly balanced. You can expect more conflict and that there are power struggles at times, right? And so the matrix structure does have advantages, right? It's access, less anxiety, because if somebody in a function goes on vacation, you'll probably get somebody else in that function to fill that role, right? For example. So it's that balance of resources and a little bit of flexibility added. But of course, with anything, there are also disadvantages. That power balance, as I mentioned, is delicate, right? And that you will have to compete for resources as other matrixed projects are competing for those resources also. And of course, it violates unity of command and makes unity of effort much more difficult, right? And then nowadays we have virtual projects, right? Where the project team crosses time, space, and organizational and cultural boundaries, especially with remote work during COVID, right? It's facilitated by the use of the internet. Frankly, I'm not sure these would be effective at all without. So, but certainly is facilitated. Okay. The virtual rules for success are listed here in these organizational types, including this online resource to learn about each other, right? When I'm virtual, I begin every meeting with, so say it's a team in India, I might say, okay, tell me what is in the news in India today, share with the team. Or tell me some cultural date that you're celebrating that's coming up so that we could understand and celebrate with you, right there. And it's about getting to know each other. And I find that 4 or 5 minutes at the start of meetings really useful about applying this balanced approach with each other, right? And of course, dividing the work into modules is helpful. So projects also come in composite organizations, and so it adds a sense of flexibility, right? It's basically one of the various combinations of those previous forms: the virtual organization, the projectized, the functional, or the matrixed, and of course the matrix being weak, balanced, or strong. So a composite organization can look like that, and you can see Project M, Project 2 on this slide, but the functional organizations of finance and engineering, manufacturing, there's probably some matrixed sharing of resources between them. Now, when selecting a project form, right, the firms typically don't pick and set out to pick an organizational form. An organizational form normally develops for one reason or another, right? And evolves over time. And it's never static, though it's not going to change very fast either. But it can, right? Functional organization is really the best for an in-depth application of technology. My Air Force, when I was active duty, was a functional organization. A1, A2, A for Air Force, A3, A4. A3 were operations, including aviators, aeromedical evacuation personnel, people that flew. A4 was maintenance, so it was all the maintainers and all their 30, 40, 50 specialties that fell underneath those, right? And so if it's an in-depth technical organization or a large capital investment, a functional organization is usually useful. Projectized is good for handling a large number of similar projects. So you might have even a number of program managers because they're similar projects, right? Because you want to gain efficiencies between them, right? And share resources and knowledge. As one learns, the other goes, I could use that. Great. So, and also if you're handling one project at a time that requires a lot of control, some big project, some strategic project would be another reason for a projectized organization. A matrix organization is often best for projects that require input from several different functional areas, right? So if you've got to reach across a lot, then a matrix organization is really a solid way to go. And my Air Force example was a good one of that, I think. We talked last week about the PMO, right? The Project Management Office and their role. I remember offering a slide last week which had so many of the functions, including assigning a project manager, providing templates, giving guidance. They are part of the C-suite that is input to the business documents, which include the business case and the benefits management plan. They will guide you to categories that you should use in your project, like risk categories and things like that. PMOs, 60% of organizations have them, and it's growing. They're all not implemented equally, but they are there and growing, the number. And they're largely about governance, right? Providing governance and guidance and rules for the project manager. And then I want to just touch on, closing it out, project management maturity, right? We want to get better over time. An underlying principle of project management is continuous process improvement, right? We talked last week about value engineering, or sometimes it's called value stream mapping, or just value mapping, right? This maturity model. We want to get better all the time. And we need to get better, we need to know where we're at and where we're going. It's one reason we set a baseline, right? So the project management competency is one of those factors in project management that leads to success. And to standardize and know where you're at is useful in achieving maturity. So there are various maturity levels. There are often just 4 level. There are lots of maturity models in the world. Carnegie Mellon is one that comes to mind. The CMMM, Carnegie Mellon Maturity Model. There are many. NIST for IT security has a maturity model, right? And so we want to, we could use any form. Here are 5 definitions that you could use: initial, repeatable, defined, managed, and optimized. We are always, are we all? Yeah, we're generally seeking optimized. That's high performing teams. But in reality, you have to ask yourself, do I want to spend that kind of money to be optimized and that kind of energy? Maybe managed or defined is good. You definitely want to be repeatable. Initial is no way to run a railroad. You must get to at least repeatable. And again, senior management involvement is really the way to drive through these levels of the maturity model. Okay. And then just some final notes about human factors and the project team, worth your review, but just kind of a summary from the readings. And that wraps up week 2. And we still have the discussions, homework, etc. Read the online portion, the syllabus. We'll comply with that. Write me if you have any questions. And look for live Zoom sessions. You don't have to join, but if you do, it's a chance to engage me, to ask me questions about the assignments or other general topics about the career field. And I will record them if you don't get them and post those recordings online. Thank you.